Well, good evening to you again. Last night's programme marked the Radio 1 debut of The Flowers, stars of Fast Records' Earcom 1. Tonight we feature the Prats, who are made vinyl on the same record, and stuff from the likes of the teenage film stars Tom Verlaine, Matumbi, This Heat, The Reds, Madness, Susie, of course, Burning Spear, The Chords, The Who, Joy Division. Don't you get fed up with these lists? I get fed up with reading them out. Straw Dogs. Mind you, of course, none of this stops me making plans for William. He's still not as quick on the turn in the area as I would like, but after all, he is only 3.5. By the time he's 4, I think I'll have him trained. That's XTC, and I think before we hear the first number from the Prats, I ought to give you a bit of their history. In fact, their history in toto, as it stands. In the winter of 1977, Brian has written, brothers Greg and Dave Maguire started messing about with friends, making a demo tape, which they sent to Fast Records, and Fast used a track from this, in fact, several tracks from the demo, on the Earcom album, and the Prats decided to form a proper group as Fast had taken them seriously. Tom Robinson and Paul McLaughlin joined them. They're all still at school, and the lead singer, that's Greg, is the youngest at 12, the rest being around 14. They're from Edinburgh, and they've supported Shake on a few gigs in Scotland, but because of their age and the licensing laws, it's very difficult finding venues. This is Prats 2. Well, there will be those, I suppose, cynics amongst you who assume that the only reason we're playing the Prats session is because they're very young, and I suppose that, in a sense, gives it a novelty value, which I'd rather it didn't have, in a sense. But to me, it's terrific, the idea that people at this age have actually got a band together. And when I was 12, 13, 14, I'd love to have been in a band, but didn't get the chance. Heartbreaking stuff, isn't it? Anyway, this is part of Bill Wright's birthday present to me, Lee Perry, Trial and Crosses. Well, if any of the representatives of Factory Records are listening, I should very much like a cassette of this album so that I could listen to it in the car. Of course, said he loyally, only at times when Radio 1 isn't on the air. That's Joy Division from the LP Unknown Pleasures, and that was Disorder. And now we rejoin the Prats for a strange interlude. Prats and Strange Interlude, and may they never forget the merits of brevity. I try to remember them myself, but it's very noticeable that as bands lately have become more and more successful, that their tracks tend to get longer and longer and longer, except, strangely enough, the Pistols, whose things tended to get shorter. Anyway, that was Strange Interlude, and this is Per Uber with another minute 30-second piece. This is The Voice of the Sand. Penetration, of course, and that's come into the open. And now another one from the Prats, 1 minute and 5 seconds of A Day in the Life of Me. Is it a little pompous to say that I think Captain Beefheart would approve of the Prats? That's A Day in the Life of Me, and of course more from the band as the programme progresses. And while the programme's been progressing, I've been looking through a book called Record Hits, the British Top 50 Charts 1952 to 1977, new edition of the same, a book which is almost deliberately unglamorous, actually, unlike the Mike Reid, Paul Gambaccini, etc. collaboration, which is distributed as prizes by Radio 1, but it's a very handy book indeed. For example, did you know, the reason I mention this is because The Who have had 23 hit records over the years, and the last of them was 3.5 years ago, but you didn't know that. This is from the LP set Quadrophenia. Burning Spear, and that's Marcus Garvey, which was originally issued on the LP of the same name, but is now on an album called Harder Than the Best, not the rest of the best, which is what Brian has typed in front of me. And a lot of people occasionally think that these programmes are done from a script, but I can assure you that if I was reading a script, it'd probably sound a great deal better than it actually does. I do occasionally write down roughly what I plan to say, as that, but it always sounds as though I'm reading it when I do, so I don't bother very often. These are the Prats and Poxy Pop Groups, a satirical piece. Great stuff. Poxy Pop Groups, and that's the Prats, of course. And if they're this good now, what are they going to be like when they're as old as, say, Susie and the Banshees? Well, the chances are, of course, very often happens that they won't be as good as they are now, but time alone will tell. This is Icon. Tangerine Dream for the 1980s, Jerry and the Holograms on Absurd Records, the B-side actually of their only single to date, and that's called Increased Resistance. The next one from the Prats is Nothing, and that's not as stark and uncompromising as the title might indicate.
No!
And if you're listening, Mary, what you thought was a rude word is merely the Scottish for sit. Those are the Prats, and that's called Nothing, and here's a chart record.
Buster, he sold the heat with a rock steady beat.
It sounds as though somebody's in pain in the background. Those are colour tapes on Wavelength Records, and that's called Cold Anger. Another one now from the Prats, and this has the intriguing title, Jesus Had a PA. Well, I must say, I think that this Prats session is one of the best that we've had in years, and I really mean that too, and I feel rather ashamed by the fact that the tape that we're using, which was provided by the record company, has actually lain around Peel Acres for several months at the bottom of one of the boxes that I've got full of demo tapes, and I'm a bit annoyed about that, because I should like to have broadcast it earlier. Nevertheless, here it is, and it's very good. That was called Jesus Had a PA, and after that spiritual thought, Kingdom Come. Prats and You're Nobody. Very intentioned inefficiency is to blame for it. Does this make me a Pratt too?
Hey!
And that's the last of what has been a great session from the Prats, I think. It's called Prats 1.